Hello and welcome to another album analysis. In today's video we're taking a look at the debut studio album from the American pop punk band All My Friends Are Cats, titled The Way I Used To. The Pittsburgh three-piece did contact me and ask if I'd be willing to check out their debut studio album, give it a listen and consider doing a review, and I was very pleasantly surprised by what I got to hear. The band actually did record and produce most of the album themselves, with the exception of a little bit of drum tracking, which is certainly very difficult when you're kind of trying to put out your first album, and doing all the recording and things like that yourself certainly adds an extra element of difficulty when you don't have some big budget studio or producers to help you out. And if you decide you want to check out this album for yourself, I will post a Spotify link to the album in the description of this video. So will this prove to be an album that you can get used to, or simply be one you want to forget? Let's take a look at it track by track. Opening the album, we do have voices with its almost surf rock styling in the guitars that we have got, and lyrics that start to give us possibly a bit of an idea of where this album will go. I've been feeling numb to just about anything, haven't got used to the passing of days. And it certainly felt like an album that seems to explore the idea of kind of those late teens, those early 20s, when you haven't fully formed an idea of what you want to do, where you want to go. You're going through the myriad of life almost, where things aren't quite set in stone. This idea of haven't got used to the passing of days, how time starts to speed up as you get older, and it makes constant references to voices, kind of listening to different people, whoever it may be, or that voice in your head telling you what to do that doesn't always agree with the actual actions that you make. And this song also serves as a great introduction to the actual band, to their stylings as well, just to really introduce themselves and really show off their sound. Next up we do have Stay Together for the Cats, a very quirky title, but I do like the ability to resonate with this song, because many people stay in broken relationships because of the kids, because of the pets, things like that. They usually look for excuses to tie them together. It does have a much more upbeat styling and some really interesting lyrics as well. This is me trying, and no, it doesn't look like much. This idea that someone's trying to put as much effort into a relationship as they can, but it may not be well reciprocated from the other person. We'd also get some really interesting quirky kind of key sounds coming in as well, and a slow drop in the middle of the track before it does return to pace, almost kind of emphasizing this idea of kind of, I don't care anymore about this relationship. If it's over, it's over, after you've tried to kind of fix things. So it really has quite a bit of story built into it as well, really showing there's someone kind of trying to stay in the relationship before they kind of have to realize that they've got to give up, and they can't just simply stay together for the cats. Next up we do have probably one of my favourites from the actual album, called Back Away Now, and it opens with a beautiful lyric in the form of, "You've got the self-control of an active volcano," really just showing the idea that someone really doesn't have control of their actions or their emotions. And it's often something we see with people that haven't fully formed their ideas, and they'll kind of stand on everybody else to kind of get their way. The idea of this active volcano, this idea of this eruption, and they do show a lot of strong lyrics throughout this track. You're like a sinking ship, so really touching on either falling or destructive, volatile items or things in the world, really tying in these strong metaphors with very simple things to understand. It's all about this idea of someone trying to bring you down with them, and it's actually the idea of kind of someone's got to back away to kind of get out of the harm's way almost, or get out of the active volcano zone, if that's what you want to call it. But we also get some really beautiful layering of the vocals as well. They kind of bring that in on this track to great effect as well. But I just love the lyrics and how they kind of break down this idea through very simple things to understand, the idea of kind of somebody being very destructive again in a relationship. Then in track 4 we do have Speak to Me, which has some really interesting switching of paces into these slower and then faster tones, really just blending between the two quite nicely. We also do get this really sharp guitar open that really catches you and really pulls you into the actual track. And also some of the lyrics do again reflect this idea of a volatile relationship. I just hope you won't come back to me, smile at me so crookedly. And we do get a couple of really interesting things included as well, with a kind of key solo that sounds very reminiscent of Maximo Park's Our Velocity. Very quirky, very interesting sounds that you don't often get to hear in kind of these pop punky elements, so definitely tying into some different kind of roots almost, rather than the typical sounds you would see in that genre. For track 5 we do have Calling Home, and there's some great production on this track. All the instruments are very well balanced, and for a band that have produced and recorded their first album almost entirely themselves, it's great to see how that does stretch throughout most of the album. There are a couple of points where the vocals are slightly drowned out, but for a debut album it's really great to see how they've done that. This song does also make great use of very fuzzy guitars. It did give me a very Silver Sun Pickups vibe in the way they were kind of blending these fuzzy guitars into the track. We do also get a great build as we do head through the track as well, which I really did enjoy. At the midpoint of the album, we do have Motives, which is a bit of an acoustic interlude. I really do like this. They've actually brought the ukulele out for this track and one of there towards the end of the album as well. And it's great to see them again making use of these quirky elements that you don't often get to see. It really adds a nice blending between the acoustic guitar and the ukulele. And it just touches on the idea of motives as well. So why bother with all the things that nobody ever gets to see? So kind of touching on kind of emotions, motives, things that people can't often get to see and how they can affect different people. You will always be anything but clean, but I see what you mean. It's quite an interesting track because it kind of touches again on this volatility between two people, but it's kind of very reflective in that last line, but I see what you mean. So this kind of person having this self-realization that it's not always the other person that can kind of be the issue, it can sometimes be yourself. So just a very short track, only in at 1 minute and 32, but does cover just a nice interlude that's not boring. It's not kind of just added in for no reason. It does add extra depth to the album itself. For track 7, we do have Where I Reside, which has this very easy plodding pace to it that I really quite enjoyed. And I love some of the lyrics that do come through. Again, I just can't exist anywhere. So again, this tying in this idea of kind of feeling lost, like you're not really sure what to do with life and what direction you want to go in. So again, touching on that idea, kind of adolescence or young teens, when you still haven't formed fully ideas of how you want to continue to develop yourself. This couch in my room is where I reside. And there's also a lyric later on about connecting the stars. And I love it's the idea of kind of being on a couch, looking at the ceiling, staring into space. Again, this idea of being either lost in your own thoughts, really undecided, kind of daydreaming, not really being tied to the world and tied to particular ideas. So I like how you can connect the dots with this track to really show off a stronger messaging, all revolving around the idea of not really knowing where to place yourself in life. For track 8, we do have Deadlines, which has a slightly deeper kind of plot to it, slightly darker in tone, but it does have, again, more interesting lyrics. Just leave me alone to myself, you should know this is gonna end. So really touching on the idea of deadlines, the finite ending that can't be moved, where things have to kind of grow apart or things have to come to an end. It's quite the game to keep this flame from going out as we grow old. So you can kind of see that this relationship is coming to an end. Another track that really does focus on that, but kind of touches on the idea of accepting that end is coming, and does have a really interesting guitar driven instrumental break as well, which I quite liked, and the idea of constantly referencing this is gonna end, kind of like you know what the future holds for this relationship and you're kind of just dragging it out, but you're kind of accepting of what is to come in the future. For track 9, we do have The Way I Used To, with these very active drums, really good pacing on this track that really adds great flow, including a rhyming chorus as well, which really helps to do just that. There is a couple of points in this track where the production does feel slightly off and the vocals are slightly drowned out by some of the other instruments that can make it kind of hard to pick out some of the lyrics, but some great lines still included. Frozen Yet Again, Static in My Head, really just showing the idea again of this idea of being lost, this idea of being frozen, undecided. So lots of these songs do reference back to this kind of same idea they've explored throughout the album, just from this constant perspective, but not doing it in the same way every single song, really touching on different ideas, these simple ideas of being frozen, being stunned, static, this fuzziness in your head. So I really enjoy the way lots of these lyrics tie to an idea but are very simple to understand. Then rounding out the album, we do have Mind Over Matter, another acoustic open with the ukulele, making great use again of just the two working together, and a great outro to the album. And it kind of touches on the idea exactly of what it says in the title, the idea of mind over matter. If you're undecided, usually it's kind of battling your own head and just really trying to force yourself forward. Your mind is the one that decides what you want to do, which direction you want to go, and makes many of the decisions in your life. So I kind of do like how they're focusing on that, not being focused on material things and letting your mind kind of win out. And there are also lines in this track that do link back to Voices as well, to the opening track, which I quite enjoyed. The way that they loop the album back, it kind of goes full circle and just has a nice way to kind of use them as the intro and the outro to the album by making those reference back between the two. So overall, I was really impressed with this album. It's great to see a band really take the bull by the horns, not just put out something quick, something rushed. You can see that they've really focused on it despite their short time together. There is actually meanings included within the track. There is great thought put into the production, into almost every aspect of this album. And while it's not a complete masterpiece that with everything shining, it's great to see for a band that have produced and recorded most of it themselves, the amount of effort and the strength they have put into this album, even with the very very occasional misfire that may come just from the balance of the instruments on a couple of the tracks. But one of the main things I do love is how it seems to just explore the idea of being lost, this idea of being uncertain throughout most of the album, whether it be through the form of relationships, just kind of that point in life where you're not really sure where you want to go, how you want to develop yourself. And I like how many of the songs do make reference to that through some great metaphoric meanings as well that are very simple, very easy to tie in with. So it's definitely a very impressive first showing from the band. So overall, I'm going to give this album a 7 out of 10. It's a very mature first release from the band, despite kind of only actually being together since 2022, jamming together and actually starting to perform shows in March of this year. I do think compared to some other debut albums that I've heard from smaller bands, this certainly kind of stands out as being much stronger, much more well-rounded and better produced than some I have heard in the past. So that will be everything for today's video, but if you do want to give the album a listen through yourself, then I will post a link to the Spotify in the description of this video. Give it a listen, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you agree that it is quite a strong and impressive first showing from a small band, or do you wish there was more they could have included to really flesh it out? I would love to know your thoughts, and as always, if you would like to see more content like this, then please do feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next album analysis.